Hello and welcome. Welcome to Parenting Differently, where we leave behind the old way of parenting and allow the gifts of motherhood, of parenthood to raise us. Different to perhaps how we were raised, different to how society is telling us to raise our kids, maybe even different than we expected we would be raising them. Just different. I'm your host, Anya Simmons. Welcome, welcome. I'm a trained British nanny, a yogi, a mum of two big people, and a parenting coach and an author. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So do look for my book out there, Parenting from Displaced. I would love to. Welcome to Parenting Differently, where we leave behind the old way of parenting and allow the gifts of parenthood to raise us. Different to how we were raised, different to how society tells us to raise children, maybe even different than we expected we would be raising them. Just different. I'm your host, Anya Simmons. Welcome, welcome. I'm a trained British nanny, a yogi teacher, a mum of two big people, a parenting coach, and an author. And I came into parenting thinking it would be pretty easy, pretty standard, as I had raised many other people's children. And I was not aware of how transforming it would be to raise two incredible humans and be part of that and really doing the healing and the work on me that they helped bring to light. So my guest today is Danielle Meadows Stinnett. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. She's a fellow podcaster, a digital branding specialist, and founder of the Octane Design Studio. She has a blended family and is an advocate, as well as a wife and a mother. And I'm really excited to have her on based on one thing that she wrote to me, which we'll get into when we speak with her. But it says, I have learned to love my children deeper in how I echo my life to them. Pretty mic drop moment. Welcome, Danielle. So, welcome, Danielle. I'm so happy you are able to join us and share your wisdom.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So, let's jump right in. Tell us a bit more about who you are and who you're parenting, and anything about your parenting journey that you'd like to share.
Sure. I'm Danielle Meadows Stinnett. I'm mom of four, and it's a range of four. Like I have my earliest son when I was 21, and I just had a baby celebrate his first birthday just a few
Wow.
weeks ago. A range there from 15 years of kids. So it's been very, very fun being that type of mom. But I'm also the type of parenting, the type of mom that I am. I'm a mother to a range of children with different types of hearts and minds and feels. So the type of parenting that I focus on is primarily the things that will be more of a guide to my children to surpass me. The type of parenting that I invest in is the generational wealth that I want to instill in them so that their grandchildren and their great grandchildren can continue to thrive and strive, knowing that it's okay to be themselves and to celebrate themselves as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. And where did that wisdom come from?
It comes from a long lineage of just being in large families, period. So my
Right.
mother is one of nine, my dad's one of 13. We just
Ooh.
come from this really big village capacity and this village mindset that each one teach one, that you necessarily don't have to climb up the ladder to be successful. Success is defined in your heart and in your mind, not necessarily by the valuables and the accolades or the awards that you achieve in life. And so I understood that from a young age, and I had great examples with my parents. I'm a third generation entrepreneur, watching my grandparents move things and sell their wares out of the backs of other people's home. So it's really interesting to come from that mindset also, as what defines
Mm.
success.
Yeah, and this when you said about your children about the well, it was so much. I was like, oh my god, that's brilliant. I wish I'd be writing this down. Um, this idea of them being individuals, and that you
Mm-hmm.
are sort of the holder of space. around them.
Yes, that
Right.
is exactly what I'm saying. Exactly. So I definitely try not to come necessarily as an authoritarian, although my children will probably say otherwise. But I try my best to really just be a guide, helping them understand and navigate these spaces so that they can in turn internally work on that for themselves, but also be a guide to the people behind them and a guide for the people around them.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. So what are you doing differently with your four than perhaps how you were raised?
Oh goodness, there's where do I begin?
Yeah, yeah, just name a
There's just
few.
there's a few things. One is just exploring, having a world that they understand a little bit, but knowing there's a whole nother world out there that they don't understand, the unknown.
Right.
And I feel like differently from how I was raised, there were certain categories, certain things that we did robotically. And so I've been more organic, I feel like, with my children. We do have certain structures and we do have certain systems that are in place, but I feel like I've let them be more organically open in what they choose to travel into and what not to travel into.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that because it's again giving the power to them and not being raised with so many no's that you just assume, oh, I remember as an adult even looking back going, wow, I just thought we just didn't ask questions. Like I just thought that's what we just did, and then suddenly you go, hey, and I didn't realize I had loads of questions.
Right.
Hey, I just realized there's a world of questioning. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So same. I grew up in a very small southern, kind of like a small town, and it was very much more of a you just kind of keep to yourself. You don't ask questions. Kids are, it's more likely for them to be seen than heard. That sort of feel. So growing out of that, I realized as I was beginning to branch and create my own family that I didn't want to follow those same systematic structures per se, but I did want to create some sort of grounding for them that allows them to understand and respect, authority in a certain way or fashion, but also understand why that's so important. So, growing up, you hear your toddlers ask that question, why? And, at first that was I wanted to go back to my roots, right? Because I said so, I wanted to go back to that authoritarian, like just, kind of fear, systematic
And it's almost
system, if you will.
easier. It is easier. It's easier if we really could just go, no,
Yeah,
just listen. I know, right? That is
exactly.
almost in the short term. That is an easier way to parent, I think, right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's kind of where I decided to kind of veer a little bit from that. Better understanding, explaining to them like why. And then also in just being a special needs mom, where it's a little bit more more atypical, like I really do have to explain why, because sometimes they just won't connect those dots. And so I'm having to do that in one area, and then another area where it's just more of a flow. They generally understand, but I sometimes and a lot of times over communicate, and I feel like that's something that's very different from the upbringing that I have.
And in over communicating, I think there's that risk sometimes, or that sort of, because me too, I would like to explain it all. I'm going to tell you everything that's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep you like making good decisions.
Right.
Is this way of, we can over explain. I mean, it's different when you're talking with special needs. I understand that is a different, but there's an over explaining sometimes that is coming more from our own fear. Like even, you're going to drive in the car. Okay, you're not to drink. You're not to.
Yes.
As opposed to lean back and trust. And I think that was a detriment to my kids sometimes when they were younger growing up, is that I felt that I had to keep giving them all the information of where we're going and what this and what this. And sometimes it was like, whoa, lady, shut up.
Yes. I feel you. I totally relate to that as well. And I think that's where I started really with my teenagers now, where it's more of, I've explained this to you before. At this point, we can kind of step back and let things happen. Now, mind you, when we step back, some things just kind of hit the fan, and they're going to have speed bumps, and they're going to, have little mountains, and they're going to have to, figure out life. But that's part of the journey. That's part of them understanding who they are, part of them understanding what they're capable of doing. So I think that's really important that we kind of focus in that area as they grow older, less hands-on.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard because to me there was more fears as they got older as opposed to when they were younger because I didn't know who their friends were. I didn't
Hmm.
know really all the time where they were going. What who somebody phoned when I grew up. Everybody heard you on the phone. Here you're like, who are you talking to?
Yeah, yeah, that trust factor, right? I mean, even now with the age of technology, being able to pick up that cord phone was a little bit of a safety net because you
Yes.
know that someone on the line could possibly listen and you could kind of figure some things out. But
Yeah.
the opposite of that now, our kids have individual phones. They have their own
Mm.
little technology sectors of life that are involved with these things that are attached to their appendix. And I'm just trying to figure out like why is so much investment in that. But at the same time, that's just part of the routine of growing up and understanding, feeling things out and growing and maturing in their own right.
Yeah, yeah, and our role, like the mothering role, is always then changing, isn't it? It's having to adapt to that to realize, like, oh, okay, you know what, they're good people, so I can
Mm-hmm.
lean back, I can let them. They're good people, and I'm going to be there to catch them if they fail, and I'm going to be there to cheer them when they rise. Right? It's
That's right.
so cool. So I
Yes.
wanted to talk about. I haven't actually done this before, and I thought, oh, this is a great way to do a podcast. One of the things you said that I spoke of before we introduced you was, I love this line, and I'd love you to speak a little more on it. It says, "I have learned to love my children deeper in how I echo my life to them."
Absolutely. We
Oof.
live by example. Like
Mm.
that is really the overall storytelling that I want to give my children overall. If I die tomorrow, I want them to know that through my examples of the way that I lived was actually a way that I hope that they can learn from. And that's something that, over generations, we get to that point, but it's usually later on in the later in life phase, right?
Right,
In their
right.
30s and their late 20s, they start
Mm-hmm.
realizing, oh, this was something that was already pre-taught to me and I'm just now picking up on the pieces.
Sure.
Well, I'm really starting that much earlier and I'm
Mm.
trying to use everyday instances to be that example for them. So that's something that I've personally taken up as my personal cross, if you will, and that's
Yeah.
something that I'm really advocating more for families who are wanting to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, really speaking my language. Like that is just so awesome. And I think I fully agree. Like you can't start it at that age. You start it now. You start demonstrating it from how you're
Mm-hmm.
living, how you
Mm-hmm.
speak to people, how you show up, how you deal with sadness, how you deal with grief, how you deal with massive joy. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll be really raw honest. There's
Yeah.
moments where I'm a boy mom. So all my children are boys, and so
Okay.
I almost laugh because there's memories where I speak to, we're a blended family. So some of my children's fathers, they made comments before about how they never saw their mom's thigh, they never saw their mom's like elbow, or
Right.
never saw their mom, put on a bra or anything along those lines. And I'm very upfront about that. So
Right.
it's one of those situations where I'm like, what other experiences are you waiting until your 20s to figure out? I mean, I've worked, eventually we grow up, we do things, all the things, but
Right.
I feel like it's really important. Like you still have those type of experiences to some degree so that
Mm-hmm.
you know what that is.
Yeah.
So being able to understand how to take care of yourself and
Mm.
knowing the basics about maybe some basic finances so that you can balance your own checkbook, whether that's physically or online,
Yeah.
like those basic tools and assets that we want to give our kids, how to treat someone when they walk in the door,
Yeah.
being able to greet someone in the morning and not harbor your own feelings onto them in the morning because of whatever reason.
Yeah.
All those resentful type of feelings that we
Mm-hmm.
typically as a teenager or young children, we don't know how to harness just yet, but
No.
we can learn from example on how we can do
Yeah.
that. So that's what I'm choosing to do.
Beautiful. And there's a vulnerability in that, right? There's a vulnerability that we're showing when we don't know all the answers. And shit, I forgot that I had to pay this bill, or
Yes.
oh my gosh, totally, missed the ball here, or in
Mm-hmm.
anything, like I remember my kids would, and even my husband was like, why are you naked? Like, close the door. And I'm like, I am in my bedroom. Okay, I do have the door
Yes.
closed. If you walk in, hello, I just got out the shower. Like, I have no shame here. And
Exactly.
it's passing those pieces on organically, right? Like you were saying
Yes.
before, rather
Mm-hmm.
than, Here, see, have a
Yes,
nibble.
exactly. Exactly. It's more of just organic part of life flow. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think it's really funny. We've had several moments where, we didn't pay the water bill on time, or we didn't pay the Wi-Fi bill on time. And oh boy, when the Wi-Fi goes
Yeah.
out, oh hell
Everybody
breaks
knows,
loose. Like, right?
especially lockdown, right? When everyone's
Armageddon. Like so I'm just like, okay, well, there's teaching moments. Yes, we were supposed to do this. No, we didn't pay it on time. Now we're kind of living out those consequences. But
yeah.
in those choices, you know what we can do? We can pull out the board games. We can pull out
Mhm.
the we can find ways to make this a positive instead of less of a negative. And so I always try to use that turn of phrase or that type of mental thinking to help them in situations where, yeah, it looks super Debbie Downer, but on the flip side, here's a bright spot.
Yeah, love it, love it. And I think when I'm thinking back, or just now in this conversation, was like I didn't know anything about my parents, say their finances or their struggles. Like we were really protected, and I
Mm-hmm.
understand as parents how you want to do that, but I don't know if it's necessarily such a good thing
Mm-hmm.
in real life. Like if we're going to be authentic and real, we don't have to put the baggage on them, right? I
Right.
get right. It's not like I wouldn't bring them in on all the oh my god, this is like awful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when you process something, there's a way to sort of talk about, wow, I had a horrible experience today, and la 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 la.
Absolutely.
It's a conversation.
Yes, as a recent example, like earlier in the very beginning of the recent Black Lives Matter movement, we
Mm-hmm.
were interviewed by NPR
Mm-hmm.
as a interracial family. Like, how does that work? How do you have those hard conversations? And the answer to all of it, which is very close to the answer that I'm giving you in general, is
Right.
having those discussions every day, making it everyday conversation. I think that is the tackle the wall that previous generations had a harder time overcoming, was how do we
Mm-hmm.
make this more normalized conversation?
Right.
Yes, there's a whole nother privy of conversation that comes from that, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the rewards are greater than the risk.
Yeah.
So it helps a lot to have those everyday conversations as a family. What does that look like? And to also celebrate those moments when we realize that it's not as, again, picturesque, but this is where we are and this is
Right.
how we can move forward. So it's really important to just over communicate in some areas.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Check for over communicating when sometimes bring, yeah, yeah, and bring to the table topics that aren't so comfortable or
Mhm.
aren't so, we don't necessarily know the answer to, right? And
Mhm.
it's so wise to see what they have to say there.
Absolutely. Yeah, they were super excited about being able to express themselves in that way. Some of them were really quiet, especially in
Mm-hmm.
regards to the NPR interview. But my second youngest, Ellington, he's 11. And at the time he was 10. And he just had the most, honest, pure answers that you could think of during that interview. And it was eye opening. It was eye opening for us as parents, being able to
Mm-hmm.
listen to our child
Mm-hmm.
speak his mind about
Yeah.
what's happening around the world around him.
Oh my
But
God, I'd love
it
to
was
see
very,
that
very.
interview. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely check it out. I'll continue
Yeah.
the link.
Beautiful. Now, as a busy mum of four and business owner and
Hmm.
podcaster, all of these things, how do you make time for you a priority? Or can you? Do you?
Oh, I do. I mean, I think for me, I'm an early riser.
Okay.
So I rise up super early and I'm sleep usually right after the kids are
Yeah.
going to bed because I just have all this energy. But I'm a personal morning person. So I really get up early. I usually dedicate at least the first hour before my kids start getting up to just things that I want to do. So if that's tea for me, tea and meditation, if that's me in a journal, maybe that's just me just reading, in the
Mm-hmm.
morning. I really make a hard effort to start my day with myself. And I actually try to use that as an example for my kids because eventually they're going to be in similar situations in the world where it's so busy. How do you make
Yeah.
time for yourself? It is having the discipline enough to get up earlier or maybe
Mm-hmm.
stay up later to
Yeah.
do the things that you want to do. But it's that discipline, that internal discipline that I'm hoping to be a model for.
I love that. I love it because as a way of starting your day. And I regret, yeah, I can have a regret. Yeah, I regret that um, I didn't do more of that when mine were younger. That and I didn't own it. I would be like, "Oh, I'm just tired. I'm just going to skip it." But I was skipping
Mhm.
on me. right? I
Right.
wasn't skipping it. And then I was skipping out on them because who I was showing up was so
Hmm.
different to who I could have been had I said, I really honor myself. I didn't have
Hmm.
those words when mine were younger, you know? I really want to honor myself. I really want this time to just, get into my day at a pace that works for me. So,
Absolutely. I'll give you another example
yeah.
was something that we did as a family a lot during the pandemic. Was our kids ate a lot of, grocery meals, but
Mm-hmm.
occasionally on our Thursday when my husband is free and available, we would do Thursday lunch dates. And that was just for mom and dad. That was super important for us to still
Mm-hmm.
find that time for us to do our thing
Yeah.
and our kids to be able to still do their thing, but still see each other in that
Mm.
retrospect. So the
Right.
kids are seeing mom and dad invest in themselves by having
Yes.
a nicer lunch, or they're
Yeah.
getting something for themselves. Our
Mm.
kids are seeing that, and as they grow older, my teenagers now, they're not as resentful, but they're just kind of like, oh, I wish, I can't wait to when I get to that point, that
Yeah.
sort of feel. But
Yeah.
that's the kind of fire that I want to kindle for them, that they can still do those things as when they're at that certain level, or when they get to that mature point in life, when they can pay for their own groceries and they
Yeah.
can pay for their own fancy meals,
Mm-hmm.
but and they see mom and dad kind of earning it.
Yeah.
And that is the picture, the window picture, that I want to paint for
Yeah.
them, is
Yeah.
that when you work hard, you can get these things. And sometimes you don't have to share them. They can be for you.
Yes. I mean,
So
that is huge. And it's showing like, hey, I'm of value. And me and my
yeah.
partner, we have a relationship separate to you guys. Like,
Hmm.
it's wonderful to sort of hear that. So, what do you think for you has been the hardest part of parenting? Especially now you have different ages, but they didn't all come at one time, right?
Right. Definitely. It's definitely having that tougher skin. I think it's so funny. We talked about this a little bit as a family yesterday, how
Okay.
my husband, who our first child together is one, and he
Okay.
just had his recent immunization shots. And when he had his immunizations, he was super bawling. He was crying. He was sobbing,
Yeah,
snotty nose, all the things. He was
yeah.
just a mess, right? And my husband's just like, I just wanted to cry and hold on, I felt so sad. I'm just like, I'm good. And so, I think over time I've learned to have a little bit of a tougher skin in reaction to their empathy or their pain level.
Mm.
Not to say that I'm hardened by it by any means.
No,
It's just a
no.
matter of sometimes I feel like our children react to what we react to.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we act out of character and we let them know, hey, I'm human, I'm allowed to emote all the things, great, and do those things.
Mm-hmm.
However, as a parent, they look up to us as to whether or not it's okay to act out, whether it's
Right.
okay to cry harder, whether it's okay to do those things. I say feel those emotions, do it, but mom is going to try to hold the ship so that you can have something to come back to.
Oh.
So, say for instance, you do want to, you got straight C's on the report card and mom's completely displeased and taking away your phone and all the electronics that you own and all the things. I'm going to let you have that moment to emote. You're allowed to be mad. You're allowed to be frustrated and do those things. Just know that when you're done with that, I'm here, and we
Mm-hmm.
can work together toward a path together to get you back to A, B's, and C's, or
Right.
things along those lines. So that's just an example.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if you were to look back at the young Danielle, 21, with the first baby, what do you think? What wisdom could you impart to her now, knowing what you know?
Oh my gosh, probably slow down. Because I was definitely single mom 21, and it was
Mm.
very difficult to I wanted to do all the things super fast. I wanted to already be back in a situated home or life situation. I wanted to already have multiple children from that point. Like there's just so much gas on myself that I personally inflicted on myself.
Right. Right.
And if I could say anything to her, it'd be to just slow down. It's okay to not know. It's
Mm.
okay to finagle and finesse as you go. Look back at the people who've done it before you. That's something I didn't start doing until
Right.
multiple children later.
Mm.
So by the time Ellington came around, I was just, okay, I don't have to have the answers figured out, because you know what? I survived this, and this. And I can continue going on not knowing all the answers. So that's the advice that I would give to 21-year-old Danielle is it's okay to not know.
Priceless. Priceless. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. I really appreciate you being on and sharing your wisdom. And for all our viewers and listeners, I'll have all the links so you can reach out. She's a incredible branding consultant, right? In her own
Yes.
business, Octane Design. So we'll have all those ways that you can reach out and, stay in touch with Danielle. So thank you so much
Yes.
for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.